karibu sana. You can grab any of the mic on the stage. Okay, so her name is Dr. Would you love to mention her name? I want to hear your voice. No, I just want to hear your voice. Just your voice?
Stacy.
Wow, yeah. You know, like a person like me from Mara, pronouncing such a word, you really need to have muogo already taken to pronounce that. By the way, her name is Dr. Stacy Bridgewater. Current law is Health and Safety and Emergency Response, HSCER, Manager of ECOP. I experience specialists in safety culture and emergency response. Education, it's more on industry recognized culture and emergency response. Key achievement, lead safety culture initiatives to ensure zero harm workplaces. Co-presenter ECOP safety approach at Occupational Health and Safety Conference and the Expo in 2024. I bring to you Madam Stacy, makofi mengi mengi kwa ajili yake. You're welcome.
Hi, thank you very much. So yes, you were quite good on the pronunciation. So I am Stacy Bridgewater, the Health, Safety and Emergency Response Manager for ECOP. In terms of my background, I have quite an extensive background in process safety. I'm an engineer by profession, and more recently I moved into the more occupational safety side. So when I started out, I preferred machines, I preferred putting in systems and protection systems. And then I realized that no matter how much you put in terms of innovation and technology, without the people, it all fails. So I've developed an interest looking more at the occupational safety side, working with people, developing strong safety cultures. So what you'll get from me this morning is a combination of the two. I'm going to tackle my design side, because when you're an engineer, you automatically go back to that. It's my first love. And I'll tackle more the people side of things. So let's start. Where did this? Fantastic. So just to give some context in terms of ECOP. So ECOP in itself is a new company. We were incorporated only in February in 2022. So we haven't been around as a company very long. The project started a long time ago, but the company has only really just gotten off the ground. We have 4 shareholders, Total Energies. That's my home company, so I work with Total Energies and I'm seconded in to work with ECOP. We have Sinuk, and we have the 2 local national oil companies, UNOC and TPDC for Uganda and Tanzania. So we're a brand new greenfield project. We're building the pipeline that's going to take the oil that's being developed by Total Energies and Sinuk. So we'll start in Uganda, close to Hoima, and then we'll travel all the way across Uganda, across Tanzania, and we'll end up in Chongelani, where we'll have an oil storage tank and a jetty. So quite a long distance to cover. Normally you're used to having one operational site, but in our case, we have over 40 sites. I made a list of all the different sites last night. And yes, we'll be well over 40 when everything is opened up. And at peak, we'll be looking at around 8,000 people. So that's a lot of people, a lot of activities, a lot of movements that we'll have to manage. So in the context, again, where you have a multicultural workforce, Wendy spoke about that earlier, speaking different languages. So it's not just Swahili and English we're having to deal with Swahili and English. And then when you go to Uganda, all the different languages, depending on where you are at the site. And then finally, you know, we're a lender finance project. So we're having to meet all the different national standards as well as international standards, as well as the lender finance standards, so all the IFC standards. So the context of what we're having to do and what we need to meet is quite large. So we're working within that context. you have seen this before, and I was really happy to see Dr. Ivan show this, because this is my starting point, the hierarchy of risk control. Because when you look at it from an through engineering eyes, you always say, what can we eliminate? We're building a pipeline, we'll have oil in it. We can't stop that, it's gonna happen, you know. Then when you look at what do you substitute? You can't substitute putting oil in a pipeline. Engineering controls, that's where you'd make the most effect. And then administrative controls, again, you make the most, because you don't want to get to the point where you're relying on PPE as your support means to mitigate that risk. But if you think about it from a people side, so for me, I've always thought about it from the engineering side. But when you start looking at it from a people side, and you start looking at what can you do to eliminate people from that hazard, from that danger, then you start thinking about it a different way. You know, what can you do to substitute that hazard or that threat so that people aren't impacted by it? And as you go through and you look at all the different things, what controls can you put in place, what administrative controls, procedures, processes to protect people, then you have a lot more opened up to you and a lot more things that you can do when you're looking at it through the eyes of protecting people. So, in terms of barriers, though, have you all seen this, the Swiss cheese model? I think it's the language that every occupational health and safety person speaks. So the Swiss cheese model is very simple, actually. And in terms of the theory, a Swiss cheese has lots of holes in it. If you're just going to cut a block of cheddar cheese, there's no holes. So you automatically have your solid barrier. But the Swiss cheese has holes in it. So when you cut lots of slices of Swiss cheese and you put them beside each other, then sometimes the hole lines up, but most times the holes don't all line up. So the concept of the Swiss cheese model is the fact that if something's going to happen there, even if someone at the site makes a mistake, if all the other barriers before that are in place, that person won't get hurt. And it's a very simple model that was developed by Professor James Reason. And it's one that we've been using throughout. And if we can address those different barriers, then no one will get hurt. Even if the person isn't wearing the right PPE, if the barriers before that are in place, no one will get hurt. And I thought, given that this is the first occupational health and safety conference we're having since the death of James Reason, I should really just use the moment to honor him, because his contribution to the Swiss cheese model and how we think has been quite significant. And he died just this month. So he's died leaving us with a very good legacy of, you know, the Swiss cheese model that will continue on for quite some time. So I really wanted to just use the moment and just to honor Professor James Reason for his contribution to health and safety. So I'm going to use that, and I'm going to think of the barriers in terms of plant, process, and people. It's a term we use a lot in process safety, but it's something that works quite well for us. Works well for us when we're looking at risk management and looking at the different barriers. Because as I said before, you can put all the best technology in, but if the process doesn't work and people are bypassing that, or if they don't know what they're supposed to do, then your technology will fail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm giving you some examples of innovations that have been put in place by ECOP for technology, plant, innovations in terms of process, and innovations in terms of people. And really, just to give you a sample, because there's so much more that's being done, but I wanted to give you some practical examples so when you go away, you have something in your mind as to what it is that we're doing. So the first thing I want to look at is more from a design part. So indulge me to go back to my engineering roots. So I'll give you two examples of the design that we're doing. for the pipeline and also for the tanks. So if we have a look at the pipeline, I'm talking about technology and I can't get this thing to work. So if we talk about the pipeline, so the oil that will come from Uganda when it's drilled is a very thick, heavy crude. So it needs to be kept at a temperature of more than 50 degrees. So if the oil is released to the atmosphere and it's not under pressure and there is no temperature, it will just solidify. And for years and years, Uganda has been trying to figure out how to get this oil out. And finally, they have had a breakthrough, and we're able to export this really thick, heavy crude oil because we have increased the pressure. So for those who have that background, it starts out around 99 degree bars. And when it's in Tanzania, you're up to 157 bars. So the pressure is quite high, and the temperatures is quite high. So when you have high temperature and high pressure, that heavy wax gets very thin and it's able to flow. And that's how we have been able to do the ECOP pipeline, because of the technology with the pressure and the temperature. But because the oil is so thick, what we're having to do is insulate it. So when you see that yellow bit that goes around, just think of it as a thermos. So people say it's the longest heated pipeline. It's not really the longest heated pipeline. It's the longest pipeline trapped in a thermos. So we have built the coating around it like a thermos to keep the oil warm. And if the temperatures decrease, which we're hoping it doesn't, then it's also has the heating cables that we can heat it up if we need to. But so that's the pipeline, and the way it's designed with the thermos to keep it warm, the way it's designed with the thickness of the wall, so that depending on where you're traveling, so like under the road crossings, it'll be thicker, so it's safer. If you're going through wetlands, those in Uganda, you relate to that a lot more, it will be thicker. If you're going through areas where we think you may have earthquakes or faults, it'll be thicker. So the design in itself gives us a lot there. But in addition to that, the pipeline, when it's done, it will be buried. But what we have done is we've put in fiber optic cables. And this is a bit really I wanted to talk about. Because what that does is it means that if a farmer is out in the field and he digs it up unexpectedly, those fiber optic cables, they'll detect the vibration, and we'll get that anti-intrusion alarm, so we should hopefully be able to respond even before it gets to the stage where you're actually digging onto the pipeline. Also, if there's a leak, the fiber optic cables detect the change in temperatures. So again, you can know very earlier on if there's a leak in the pipeline. So these are some of the things where the technology of fiber optics is helping us a lot as ECOP for our design. People ask, what are you doing to protect against the pipeline? And this is what we're doing, but the bottom line is, if we have a leak, once that oil cools down, you're just gonna have a big black, thick mess. It's not gonna be used, no one can siphon off the oil, take it to anywhere, because it's just not usable once it's outside of the pipeline. And then we go to the tanks. So just a hands up, who has heard of Buncefield, the Buncefield incident? Or heard the word Buncefield? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I'll go into a lot more detail. So the Buncefield oil depot is a storage tank depot in the UK. And it's the 5th largest storage tank depot in the UK. And what happened on the 11th of December 2005, so if you're going to share the slides, I'll correct that. I'm not predicting anything. So on the 11th of December 2005, it was a Sunday morning, early on a Sunday morning. The guys were filling up the tank, and the systems didn't work, so the tank overflowed. And it created this huge vapor cloud of gases from the tank. So even though the tanks had liquid in it, when it filled over, just by beating against the side, it created that mist. So you had this huge vapor cloud that traveled across, And there was a building next door that had a fire pump, ironically, a fire pump station, and the engine from that fire pump station ignited the cloud, and you had a huge explosion. Now, as a safety engineer, this was something that baffled a lot of us, because typically when you have that kind of scenario, you wouldn't have such a huge explosion. But this was quite huge, like 2.4 on the Richter scale. So if anyone has ever been in an earthquake, you know you do feel what 2.4 feels like. I felt 2.4, and that's quite a shake. Thankfully, because it was a Sunday morning, there was no one there, so no one died. But 43 people were injured from the neighboring communities because it shattered a lot of houses and glasses, and people were injured as a result of that. But as a result of the incident, there was a lot of change in the regulations in the UK, and as a result of that, that's some of the things that we are benefiting from when we're designing our tanks. So for the ECOP pipeline, at the end of that pipeline in Chongeilani in Tanga, we also have 4 storage tanks. We're not as big as a Buncefield. We only have 4 tanks. That's 100,000 meters cube each. So these are floating roof designs. So as the tank fills up, the roof goes up, 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 up. I was there earlier this month and had the pleasure of actually walking and standing on top of one of the roofs. So it was quite cool. My first floating roof tank experience, probably the only one I'll ever have as well. But the bottom line is, in terms of, because of what happened at Buncefield, and sadly that's how a lot of our lessons are learned and a lot of the innovations and the designs come about, you know, we're making sure that we have different levels of protection. So when you think back to the Swiss cheese, even within the design, you're making sure that you have all these different barriers. So there's one level. When that goes up to that level, it sends an alarm to the control room. If something's wrong with that level and it goes to another level, there's another alarm that goes, etc. And then if you were to have an overflow into the bund, which is the area around the tank, you have detectors that will tell you what's happening. So the tanks are all equipped with flame detectors. So if there's a fire, there are detectors that would go off, and that would trigger to the control room that there's a fire. And it also would trigger a system around the rim of the tank that has foam. So if you think about your foam fire extinguishers, it's basically a pipeline that's around the rim of the tank that sends out foam and puts out the fire. So these are some of the innovations that we have in terms of technology when we're looking at the tank design. And then I'll move on to something that's a little bit less process safety and more mainstream. And I'll talk about lifting, and I'll talk about transport. So in terms of lifting, the pipeline is 1,443 kilometers. So that's a lot of coverage to go from Uganda to Tanzania. And I spoke to our lifting specialist at the office yesterday because I wanted to make sure that what I was presented was validated by him. And he said, we have 85,000 pipeline joints. That's a lot of pipeline to transport. And if you think about a pipeline, I call it the journey of a pipeline, because the pipeline, it comes into Tanzania on the ship. Then it has to be lifted from the ship to the truck, has to get driven, lifted from the truck to the, we call it the buffet yard, where you have all the pipeline stacked. Then it has to be lifted from there onto another truck. Then it's driven by Jackie and her team, thank you Jackie, who do it very well and safely. Yeah, they take it to the coating yard, where it then has to get lifted off the truck. And then it gets stacked. Then it goes to the plant where it gets coated in that insulation that I showed you. Then it has to go from there back into the yard, then gets back on another truck. So when you look at all that process just for one pipeline, you're looking at over 700,000 lifts that we're doing for these pipelines. So if you think that each time a lift is being done and you have people having to put on cables and having to stand and guide, you're putting 2 people at risk for every time you do a lift. So if you start calculating the risk and the probability of an incident from 7,000 lifts, that number becomes really, 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 really high. Yeah. So one of the things that has been implemented as part of the, I wish I could get this thing. Where should I point? Okay. So one of the things that has been implemented as part of the project is the use of vacuum lifts. So with the pipeline vacuum lifts, you have a vacuum pack that with a cushion, and that sits on the pipeline and it creates that vacuum. So you're able to lift that pipeline and do the movements and do the transfers without having anyone around. So if something should happen, if the pipeline should fall, there's no one in the line of fire, because by using the vacuum method, there are no needs for hooks, no chains, nothing. It's just the person that's sitting safely in the cab, and they're using the vacuum lift to lift the pipeline and move it into position. So that has significantly improved safety, compared to if we were using the conventional lifts. So in the areas where we have the most activities, like in Dar es Salaam at the port, where we'd have the buffering yard, and at the coating yard, those are the 2 main areas where we have the vacuum lift. Ideally, we'd want to have it everywhere. That's not the case so far. But for a project that has so many lifts, the number of incidents we have had from lifting pipelines, I think we're at 0, Jackie. It's not no. Okay, it's not no. But we had an incident where the pipeline fell at the coating yard, but because they were using the vacuum lift, there was no one around, so no one got hurt. But if that had happened when someone was guiding the pipeline, someone would definitely have been hurt. So that's another area I wanted to just give you as an example of some of the things we're doing in terms of safety innovation. And then we come on to transport. So we're in Tanzania, Uganda, and a lot of our representatives from Kenya as well. And road accidents is one of the biggest things we're having to deal with as ECOP. I normally live in the UK, and I must admit it was a big shock for me, quite an eye-opener when I came here. And because of my role, I was dealing a lot with the whole road safety side of things as well. But I researched this from the World Health Organization website, and what they were saying is that traffic accidents are now killing more people than malaria in some countries. So Ken, where are you? In Kenya, as an example, you're having more deaths from road traffic accidents than from malaria. And we know malaria is quite prevalent in East Africa. So when you look at Africa, per 100,000 population, we're getting 19 deaths. That's a lot of people that's dying. And then if you expand that and you look at the per 100,000 population, for Kenya, you're sitting at 28, Uganda 16, Tanzania 15. So, Uganda and Tanzania are slightly less, but the numbers are still staggeringly high when you look at that. So for us, we're having to spend a lot of time thinking about road safety. I'm seeing Steve here, he's paying attention because he's one of our partners in terms of the ECOP vehicles and the monitoring that we do. But last year alone, we drove as a company over 29 million kilometers in 2024. And we predict that we'll do 36 million kilometers in 2025. So that's a lot of driving. So we have to pay special attention to this, because the main area where we are finding accidents is on the road with the road traffic accidents. So for us, we have identified that driving is our biggest risk, and therefore we spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money in this area. One of the things that we have done, we have a road traffic action plan that covers not just the technology, but also the process and the people. Because if you think about it, when you're in a situation like the one I showed you before. Okay, I won't go back. But when you're in a situation where you're having to drive and your main hazard is boda drivers, having great technology doesn't really help you. You have to focus on the process and the people and make sure that everyone has good defensive driver training. I'm not going to go into that part. This was more about the technology. But I thought I couldn't speak about the technology without speaking about the people, because the technology gives you so much. However, if the drivers aren't trained properly and they can't defensively drive and know how to anticipate that crazy boda driver that has no risk level awareness at all, then your technology is useless. But one of the things we have had for the ECOP vehicle, all our vehicles, both ECOP and contractors, they're required to have in-vehicle monitoring systems, IVMS. Now, an IVMS can be, the variation in quality of an IVMS is a very, very large scale, wide scale. So there's some that are really good, has all the bells and whistles, and some that basically just allow you to do tracking. But what we're trying to do is just improve the level of and the standard of that. And the other thing we have as well is the onboard cameras. So for example, so all our ECOP vehicles, and we want to make sure that all the level 1 contractor vehicles, they have the IVMS and the onboard cameras already for the, our logistics, the ones that are with the trucks, Jackie's team, they already have that in. And they actually, you can correct me, Jackie, they even go beyond that, and all their drivers have an alcohol test that they do before they enter the truck, and it allows them to drive. So already, you know, we have seen the benefits of that and what's being done. I don't know if you'll speak more about that in yours, but yeah, amazing what's being done by the logistics contractor in that respect. But having this system in, it allows us to do the real-time tracking and monitoring of our vehicles from a central control room. So we have the guys at Steve's team, they're monitoring, they're able to speak to our drivers. They know if the vehicles are returning home late, because we have a driving rule of no night driving. You know, if something happens, we can call the records up very easily and understand what is the problem. And from a driver point of view, it helps them as well, because they get the alerts. The camera that you see, I refer to it as the AI driver camera. You know, that's detecting if you blink too slowly. You know, it can detect whether or not you're fatigued. I'd like to say AI, but it works it out. I like using simple language, because AI is a very topical subject at the moment. Everybody says AI. But yeah, the camera is able to detect, and it gives you a fatigue warning. So, you know, it will say, fatigue alert, please stop and rest. You know, you have that lovely lady speaking to you. If you're driving and you probably see something at the side and you look away too long, the camera will alert you. Distraction. So it just allows the drivers to get those alerts. If you're driving 2 hours long distances in the heat, you know you'll get sleepy. So just having that trigger that wakes you up really helps and allows you to that. And then each driver has a unique driving tag. So before they start the engine, they have to use their tag to start. And as a result of that, it means each driver, we're able to do their driver performances, and we do Driver of the Month awards. So each month we do an award for the best driver in Tanzania, best driver in Uganda, and that's based purely on the results of the IVMS system. So we're not going based on our preference. Oh, Johnny's a good driver, I like him, he's very kind and courteous. No, we're doing it purely based on, has he done any violations? Have he done any speeding? Has he been, well, hopefully not on his phone, that's a different level. But you know, we have the facts and we're able to use that. So that's how we're using technology, I'd say, in terms of road safety and transport. So those were just some examples of technology. What's my time? Just to make sure I don't go over. And then moving on to the process. So for the process, really want to take you back to what Wendy said about the life-saving rules, because there's been a lot of work that's gone into that, and what we find is that by using these 9 life-saving rules, that's been able to frame a lot of what we do. So for us, we have these KPIs like a lot of you would do, and you have our leading indicators, so we know what we want to measure. So we set up our HSE management system, very good, that's in place, but you need to monitor that, you need to audit that, and we need to be able to track that and track the results from that so that we know what we're doing. So we use a lot of data analysis, we use Power BI. It's the best thing invented. I am not advertising Power BI. I have no shares in Power BI, but I find it's made my life so much easier, being able to take the data that comes in from the sites and being able to just process those through a data system and deliver them in a way that people can understand. And for us, you know, one of the most powerful tools is the safety observation system. If there's a company that doesn't have a safety observation system and you want to know where to start, just put in an observation system. It doesn't have to be fancy. It can be a simple card, but have the observation system. Because if you're an HSC officer and you're going out and you're doing a site tour, you're probably there for 2 hours if you go every day. These guys are there every single day. So if they're the ones that are monitoring and they're doing their audits, then, okay, that's good. If they're the ones that's monitoring and they're doing their audits, and you basically, if you have a site that has 200 people, you have 200 HSC officers. So when you think about that, the impact is really powerful. And really, we say, if you see an unsafe condition, if you see someone doing something wrong, you have the power, you have the authority to stop that job. And we encourage everyone to do that. And then submit your HSC observation. Don't leave the unsafe act and say, well, I saw this, and then go and write it in, because that doesn't help us. You have the power, you have our authority to stop. And then we'll take the information that comes on and we'll process that. So for us, that's been a very, one of the most powerful tools, and we use that. We process the information through our system. We use various online digital tools to help us to display that. We link it to our life-saving rules because those are the fundamental basic rules that if everyone complies with, we know we're 99% safer at the workplace. And then we incentivize it. We make it attractive. So we have Best Observation of the Month award scheme. And as Wendy said earlier, this year we looked at it and we actually increased significantly the award that we wanted to have. Because we want to encourage people to report, and we want to be able to acknowledge the good reports that we get in. So we have been doing that. And then finally, on people, just want to touch on 2 key things for us that we're doing. One is the importance of organizational culture, and the second one is leadership commitment. There are a lot more that I could speak about, but for me, these are 2 key ones that I wanted us to speak on. So in terms of organizational culture, we implemented 2 years ago now a Zero Harm program. And it's a safety culture program whereby what we're trying to do is just empower every single person at our sites, at our offices. Every worker is empowered. So we train our trainers. We have a company that supports us on that. We have set up a structure where each site has a Zero Harm leadership team, and then we have a strategic team that's thinking about what are the actions we want to do for all the sites, and then we have a governance board. So I sit at the strategic level. Wendy, as the director, she sits at the governance board. So we make sure that there are key people at the different levels who are thinking about what's the next step. The basic part of the program is that every single person goes through a 4-hour Zero Harm training session. So we're wanting to make people know that they need to care for each other. They need to operate with dignity. We treat them with dignity and respect. It's important for them to speak up. because if they don't speak up, then we won't know what the hazards are, we won't know what's wrong. And most importantly, we want everyone to return home safely. So the program has been running now, it's been quite successful, and we have seen a massive change in terms of observation, in terms of people speaking up, and really just opened up in terms of what we get back from the workforce, and they feeling more responsible for the work and for the safety of their colleagues. And then I think for me, one of the most important things when you talk about leadership commitment and when you look at your KPIs is really your site visits. So we refer to them as senior leadership site visits because, or directors, we refer to them as a senior leadership team. But whether it's at that kind of level or even the manager's level, having your managers, having your directors go to your site and speak to the people at the site makes a huge difference because it allows them to understand what's happening at the site. So when they're making decisions, they know what's being impacted. And it allows them to become real to the workers at the site. So for me, this is quite a powerful one. And we have a schedule that's set up, and our target that we set for this year is 35 site visits. So they go to the site, they do their tour, we encourage them to have one-to-one dialogues with people at the site, and then they come back and they report and they follow up on actions. So overall, those are the main things. I try to touch on technology innovations, what we're doing. I try to touch on some of the processes that we've put in place that's helping us to hear what's happening on the site, and then finally on people. So I'm going to close with a video that we have a new MD. You're seeing his back in that photo. We'll show a video that we prepared with him because he started with us officially in January. He's very committed to health and safety, and he wanted to have a message that everyone at ECOP would get. So what we're going to do, we'll play the video, and I'll close with the video. Thank you.
Hello everyone and welcome to ECOP. It's a pleasure to have you join our team. The East African Crude Oil Pipeline, ECOP, is a company responsible for the construction and operation of the 1,443 kilometer crude oil pipeline that runs from Hoima in Uganda to Chongoleani Peninsula in Tanga, Tanzania. The construction and operation of ECOP is not only transforming the energy infrastructure in East Africa, but also setting new standards in innovation, technologies, safety, and environmental sustainability. Joining the ECOP project means becoming part of the making for this historical pipeline. At ECOP, our objective is zero harm. Zero harm to people, zero harm to the environment, and zero harm to the communities in which we operate. These are the commitments and our core value guiding every decision and action we take. Our goal is simple: to ensure that everyone goes home safely at the end of each day, and that our operation leave a positive, lasting impact on the environment and the communities we touch. We, as a team, are taking every precaution. To achieve the goals in our HSE policy, we rely on important tools and guidelines, such as our life-saving rules, risk assessment, the permit to work PTW system, and procedures. These are not just documents or checklists. The life savings rules are designed to keep us and our colleagues safe, so everyone must comply with this. Remember, risks from driving, lifting, line of fire, excavation, working at height, to name a few, are ever present. I need your vigilance and dedication every day to mitigate them effectively. We are deeply committed to respecting and supporting project-affected persons, PAPs, engaging with local communities responsibly, and respecting the environment while preserving our biodiversity, its plants and animals. These commitments require not just policies, but actions, your actions. Every one of us play an important role in meeting those commitments every day. Every new day brings new challenges. Complacency has no place in our operations. That is why we emphasize reporting HSE observations, whether they are unsafe acts or unsafe conditions. Never forget, an anomaly reported today is an accident prevented tomorrow. I give you the mandate to stop any unsafe acts with no fear of consequences. You have my full support as your proactive approach could save a life. I repeat, it is your duty to stop an unsafe act or unsafe condition. I count on you. We operate across a large footprint, so I encourage you to stay engaged and work collaboratively. Your adherence to our processes and your commitment to safety and respect for the environment and our stakeholders is paramount to achieve operational goals. In 2025, ECOP launched the Zero Harm Perfect Day program. What is it? Operational excellence has two pillars that work hand in hand. Safety, our Zero Harm program, and performance. Sites will be recognized each month for their achievements. Finally, thank you for being part of ECOP. I look forward to seeing each of you contribute to our shared vision. Let's work together to make this journey a safe, sustainable, and successful one.
Thank you very much, Madam Stacy, for such a very detailed presentation. Very touching. Ukweli, eh? Very, very touching. So last year, I was in Kenya, and my friends in Kenya, they taught me how to appreciate when you get good things. So today I want to teach you how to appreciate whatever that we have heard from ECOP. They call it, how do you call it, MC? How do you call it? The 5 factories, yeah, the 5 factories. So you clap 5 times, 4 times, 3 times, 2 times, and you wind up with 1 time. Just for ECOP for a very nice presentation. Are we? When I say you say awa. When I say we, you say awa. Are we? Are we? Awa. I like that vibe. So let's go for the 5 factory. 1, 2, 3. 4. Yeah, I know you guys are challenged with mathematics. Back to school. No complaint. Thank you very much, madam. We'll take only 2 questions. If you have a question, please raise up we'll take only 2 questions. 1 from a lady and 1 from a gent. Madam, you'll be the first one and the last one will be the back. Kalib san.
So, good afternoon, everyone. Is it afternoon yet? Yeah, so my question, first of all, let me appreciate an excellent presentation, Dr. Stacy. That was well done. I like what you're doing at ECOP. My concern is about some oil spills that happened in Sudan, Unity State. I'm sure you must be aware about that. So it has really escalated because of the climate change. There is the oil mixing with water, and there's a lot of impact in the community. So just want to hear what you have to say about that, because I got this information from a BBC documentary, and it was a really sad state of affairs. So maybe you can just comment, maybe what could have gone wrong, what could have been done to prevent such calamity from happening? Thank you.
Do you want to start with that, or we take the second one and then you do them together?
Okay.
Second question? Karib. Okay.
Thank you very much, presenter. I really appreciate. My name is Ephraim Danford. I'm a Chief Executive Officer with the Techno Environment Investment Company. We are really committed on integrating technology with the environment. And your presentation, madam, it was really exciting because you really show us how ECOP, you are doing a good job on integrating technology on facilitating advanced health and safety to your workers. I have two things. First, you talked about the road and safety for your drivers, and you mentioned about implementing IVMS, which I really appreciate. But this is indoor. Do you have any system that prevent or maintain the safety outdoor? As we at Tech Environment, we have a driver monitoring system, which is outside the vehicle, but also we have advanced driver assistance system, which is indoor. To you as a big project and you have more than 200 people, have you ever thought about implementing that advanced telematics fleet management system? That's one. The second question, you talked on how you reduce the risk on lifting things using the high advanced vacuum system, but I didn't hear anything on the inspection. As we all agree now, we are using drone technology to reach some confined spaces or some areas with the more risky to our workers. Have you ever thought of deploying any type of technology? And after that, you're welcome to our booth to learn more about that. You're welcome. Thank you.
Hey, I like that. Eh? That's the CEO from Techno. You shoot, and then you kill the bullets. Eh? Beautiful. Over to you, madam.
Okay, thank you very much for those questions. So I'll address the environmental one first. So there's been a lot of work that has gone on in terms of in the design phase, and even before that, to minimize our environmental impact as low as reasonable, practicable. But for me, I think it all comes back to what I spoke about, the plan, the process, the people. You need first an inherently safe design. You need a design that should minimize the risk of you having that spill in the first place. However, the other important part will be the inspection and the maintenance, because you could have the best design in the world, but if you're not inspecting that over the years and you just allow your pipeline to corrode, and you corrode through your pipeline thickness, the yellow coating that you see around our pipeline, that's not meant to hold 150 bars pressure. That yellow coating is simply just to insulate the pipeline and keep the oil warm. So there are many elements. I don't know the details of the oil spill, but if it's a pipeline oil spill, there are many things that could have gone wrong. It may have corroded. They may not have been doing their inspection, and they ended up in that situation. But you have the best design, give yourself the best start. It's like when you're in a marriage. If you marry someone and you're not in love, then you're not really going to go through the years if you don't start out being in love at the beginning. So, you know, you give yourself the best start with the design, and then you make sure you give yourself the best opportunities by doing your inspection, doing your maintenance when you find. And then the last bit is on your emergency response, and make sure that you do drills, you have the paperwork, you know who to contact, you have the support system, you have the oil spill equipment ready so that if you do have an oil spill, you can respond quickly. So there are lots of different elements that will meet what you're concerned about. And then for the gentleman in the back, you spoke about the systems on the outside. I'm not sure if I'm not understanding correctly, but I'll explain. So we have as I said, with IVMS systems, there are different scales. So there's a basic one that just do that, but they're the more enhanced ones. So for example, in the ECOP vehicles, we changed out all the old IVMS system we have, and we've put in mixed telematics. So with that, you're able to get the anti-collision warning. So if you're driving and you approach the vehicle, it is able to calculate if the speed at which you're going at is too fast compared to the speed that the other vehicle is going at, and therefore it gives you that collision alert warning. So I'm assuming that's what you're referring to, which is something that we have currently in our system. So as I said, not all IVMS is the same IVMS, and the mixed telematics, I don't like using names, but sometimes you have to. The mixed telematics system, which is what it sounds like you're referring to, that's the one we changed to for all the ECOP vehicles, and we're able to get all that technology at the moment. And with respect to drone technology, so currently we are using drone technology not for access to confined space, etc. at this point for the inspections, because we're still in the construction phase, but they are using it more to do surveillance work. So definitely as we go into the operational phase, I'm sure we'll be speaking more to people like you and people like Solutions Tag, just to find out about what your capabilities are locally and how we can use drones for an inspection. I'm from an operations background in the UK. We have lots of operational sites, and we're using drones for inspections. So I'm sure it's something we'll be doing here when we start for the operations phase.
Perfect.
So, sorry, just one thing. As I was watching the video, just want to say, the life-saving rules that we use at ECOP are not ECOP's rules. They're the IOGP rules, so any company who is interested in using them can use it. So we have just adopted something that the international oil and gas producers have created, because we recognize that we work with a lot of contractors with a lot of different systems. So we wanted to speak a language that they also understand. So we use it a lot, we promote it a lot, but it's not ours. It's not copyrighted to ECOP. It comes from the IOGP, so anyone can access that. Thank you.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you very much. So team, you are allowed to learn from ECOP. And maybe the last very important thing, Madam Stacy, is the gentleman requested that you pass over his booth. And please, just get it done. Yeah, thank you very much. Jamani, makofi mengi mengi kwa Doctor. Madam Happy, you got anything for us before we welcome the next presenter?
Oh yes, I do. I am kind of tired. Are you guys tired or are you okay? We have the whole day today. A bit of stretch, please.
You need to stretch.
Because
You need. Can we all stand? I wanna teach you something.